Welcome to a deeper dive. Senate Minority Leader, newly minted Lori Berman. Thank you so much for joining.
So happy to be here with you and with my great friend, Senator Tina Polsky.
Yes.
Hi, guys.
Senator Tina Polsky. And you guys are from the same neck of the woods. You're Palm Beach County. Senator Berman and I go way back to when she was, when I was working for the Palm Beach Post 100 years ago, and you were a state rep back then. So
100 years ago? You're making us sound pretty old.
No, we're not. I was just kvetching about that. But no, we're not old. We're not old. We are fierce.
In the prime.
Right. Yes. I'm channeling my inner collie this week. So a lot happened. We recorded this, as a matter of fact, last Thursday. We recorded a podcast the day before. Your predecessor, Jason Pizzo, kind of did a stunning announcement on the floor and said he was leaving the Democratic Party. He not only said he was leaving the Democratic Party and he was going to register as NPA, but that the Democratic Party in Florida is dead. And you gave what I thought was a really classy speech on Monday. You were quickly elected by the caucus to take over for whatever is left of this session and I guess next session. And so you said it's not dead. Just give us a little recap of what happened and what your thoughts are.
So it was very shocking. None of us anticipated that. But we are a strong, united caucus. We immediately met. I was really proud and humbled to be elected unanimously to be the leader. And one of the messages I wanted to get out really quickly was to change that narrative that was put out. I strongly disagree with it. I think I used the words the caucus is and the Democratic Party is alive and kicking. And I'll tell you why I think that. We have been so successful this session in passing bills. We've been extraordinarily effective in stopping bad policy in the Florida legislature. And I think when we finally do the budget, we will be effective in bringing money home to our districts. But it's not just in the Florida legislature that we see that the Democratic Party is alive and kicking. We see it in the changes nationwide in the recent election, where the polling in the two where the actual results in the two congressional districts was 15-point swing. We see it in the students who are marching here from FSU demanding gun control. We see the party alive in the labor leaders who are here coming to the state saying that we should not change our child labor laws or abrogate our minimum wage. We see it in the people who are fighting with us to not change the citizen petition process here in the state. And we are seeing it in all of our communities that the democratic ideals and values are being talked about and really pushed here in the state of Florida.
Well, one of the things, and it was a surprise we did see two House members switch to the GOP after the November elections. There's a lot of thoughts about that. But it was a surprise, I think, especially because Senator Pizzo was the leader at the time that he made it, with 1 week allegedly, presumably left in the legislative session. And, it seemed to take everyone by surprise, although I will say that Senator Pizzo has been sort of an independent voice and aligned with Republicans in the past. And I've had him on the podcast before, and he kind of prides himself on being a deal maker. I mean, if you listen to him talk, he's been involved in a lot of different issues, and his input has been taken into consideration. And so, I guess a surprise in some regards because of his status as the leader, but then in another way. And then, there's also kind of playing into this, there's always so many layers in everything in Florida and politics. Will he or won't he? There's rumors that he may, in fact, he said, he might not run for governor next year. So what is your takeaway on like the politics of his decision?
I mean, I really am not going to discuss the politics of his decision.
Sure.
I can't speak for him. But what I can say is we united and we're moving forward as a caucus. He chose that path. I'm more disappointed in the timing of it than anything.
Right.
With, like you said, 1 week to go. We should have, I wish he had finished out session and then if he chose to do what he wanted to do. But he chose the path. I'm not sure, like you said, he's independent. And I'm just focusing now on us as the Democratic Party and unifying us. And we are strong and unified. I've never seen our caucus as unified as we are right now and moving forward together.
Do you think that helped to kind of, I'm going to ask you, because you're a member of the caucus, right? So this is Senator Polsky joining us now.
I think, unfortunately, there was some tension.
There's always tension in the caucus, right?
There's always tension in the caucus. I think we were faced with adversity and we had to act really quickly. And the way everyone came together with love and respect immediately after did bring us closer together. So we had no choice. We were forced into a situation. We lost poor, Geraldine Thompson at the beginning of the year. So we were 12, then we were 11, and now we're 10.
Yeah.
So we've been going through this, for a while. So I think we kind of took this moment to make a big change, and there is a big change. We are working together, communicating better. And even though there's very little time left this session, I know that next session, we're going to start off in a much different place as a group. And then we should have another member by then, and we'll just be ready to go. So I'm so excited that Lori is our leader. She's doing a phenomenal job in such a short amount of time. And how great that she took this on, and she's terming out. She's going to end on such a high note. We're so proud of her, and she's doing a great job. And she's everybody's choice because she brings everyone together, and she's so smart and works so hard.
Yeah, I mean, that's what some of us who've been around in the press corps, and I've known you, like I said, for a very long time, maybe not 100 years, but it's been quite a while. And I thought that, first of all, there was talk that it might be you, Senator Polsky, that would be the choice.
Oh, rumors.
But because there's never any rumors in the Capitol,
nothing,
right?
Never.
But when I saw the announcement that or my colleague told me that it was Senator Berman or Leader Berman now, I thought, well, that's really, again, nobody cares what Dara Cam thinks, but this is I have the mic here and it's got my name on it, so whatever. That was a really, really smart choice by the caucus because you are a steady hand, you're a solid Democrat, you're super smart, you read the bills, you are always prepared, and so I thought, well, this is, a steady hand, and you're not shrill, you get emotional, but you're not sent back to the bubble because you're, on the verge of fisticuffs ever.
Right. I mean, I think Tony Mann did a piece on me and he said, I don't fly off the cuff.
Okay.
Or someone said that was the word they used.
Dara, what did the last Senate Democratic leaders who all left before their time was done have in common?
Yeah, they're all men. In fact, I was going over it. I was like, okay, Jeff Clemens, Gary Farmer, we don't even want to, but yeah, and now Jason Pizzo. The other two were kind of forced out, like they didn't leave on their own. I don't know if you want to give away. I don't know if anybody's asked you. Was there sort of a coup in the wings?
No.
An overthrow? Okay.
No.
Yeah.
No. But thank you. And I do think when this was all happening, I really had some time for introspection. Not a lot, but I decided
like an hour.
Yeah, basically.
Exactly. And I thought, I have the most seniority in the caucus at this point, or I was among the most senior in the caucus, and I thought this is actually the perfect time for me to step in. My skill sets will be really helpful for the caucus. There was talk also about Tracy Davis coming in because she is the next leader, but I thought, let's not put her in a position where she's got way too much on her plate.
She's got to recruit.
Exactly.
And
she does the fundraising.
She's got fundraising because she's got another year. And we've seen that kind of, it does we've had leaders that have served 2 terms. And by the end of their second term, sometimes the wheels start to fall off.
Yeah. And I want her to succeed. And I thought, this is perfect. I can come in. I can help her. I can be her partner. I can set everything up for now. Finish on, my message to the caucus was, let's finish strong this week. Let's get through this week. And then we'll continue on and we'll be in a better place for next year, and we'll be really fantastic at that time when Leader D Davis takes over.
Right. Is that what you call her? Leader D?
Leader designate.
Oh, Leader D. Sorry.
Yeah,
I was thinking because of Davis.
That
right.
too. We can do that.
She needs my D pin everybody loves. I was talking about layers for what's going on this session, and this, what do you call it? A feud? I call it
a feud.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a feud. Is it escalating?
Yes.
So I was saying it was escalating. No, because it's like full out Hatfields and McCoys at this point between. Our listeners are very sophisticated, but I'll just spell it out in case you've been under a rock for the past 2 months. House Speaker Daniel, we call him Danny, and I know with all respect, Daniel Perez, and Governor Ron DeSantis. And we saw some of that flare up. Now, in many ways, the Hope Florida probe that the House did, which they suddenly dropped, which seemed a little bit odd, but the governor has been holding press conferences around the state over the past couple of weeks, lobbing bombs at the House. Now it seems like the Senate, from what I gleaned on the floor yesterday, is not happy with some of the things that the House is doing. Maybe you can fill us in on those tensions.
Sure, absolutely. So we started the budget process $4 billion apart. In my 15 years in the legislature, the House and the Senate have never been $4 billion apart. And the basis for that $4 billion, as most of your listeners know, since they are sophisticated, is that the House has called for a sales tax cut of 0.75%. And that is roughly for a $4 billion tax cut. And our leader, President Albritton, has wisely, I think, said that is probably not a sustainable cut. They have looked into what would be the repercussions down the road. We could sustain it for this year, maybe next year, but after that, it's going to continue to have huge impacts. I think the numbers I've heard are year 3, $8 billion shortage, year 4, $13 billion shortage. And our leader, our Senate president, has said, I don't want to pass a budget that's not going to be sustainable, that my predecessor is going to have to deal with. And if we have those kinds of budgets, those are horrendous for cuts for social services. And he doesn't want to do something like that. So he's been trying to be the voice of reason and the adult in the room and saying, I'm willing to look at some alternatives to help people, such as the sales tax being reduced on clothing up to $75 per item. And that gets us, and we continue to do proposals like that. And then in the meantime, you had the governor's proposal, which was to eliminate the property tax, which
and
is
give people
also
$1,000 rebate on property taxes.
Which is also clearly unsustainable in a state where property taxes is very much a big part of our budget.
Well, I think we want to be clear. He wants to eliminate property taxes on homesteaded properties, which is for Florida residents, because kind of screw the Canadians. I keep hearing this, I grew up in Hollywood, and Hollywood wouldn't be what it is today if not for a lot of the revenue that the Canadians brought in, but that's a whole nother story, I guess. But he does keep saying, let the tourists pay for these things, and people who have 5 homes.
But I don't think the tourists give us enough of money. I have no problem with letting the tourists pay for things. I agree with that part of it, but there's not enough money. And it's just, if you're going to start doing these things, you need to do studies. Where's the empirical data? We in the legislature don't have the information we need to be voting on these things. Now, I saw Speaker Perez did put together a committee this week, and maybe that's the way to start going and addressing these issues.
He kind of took the property tax issue away from the governor.
Yeah, which was fascinating.
It was really interesting, right? Kind of Machiavellian or the art of war kind of a thing, right?
Yeah, and some of the tensions that you're kind of noticing in the last couple of days is also pretty natural between the House and the Senate. You know, every year I've been here, and this is my 7th year, there's, you know, we don't concur in the amendment that the House brought over, and everybody cheers, and it's very exciting.
Yes.
So each chamber likes to assert its independence. On top of that, this year, the Senate has stopped a lot of bad stuff. For instance, lowering the age for a long gun back to 18.
That's right.
There's always been talk of open carry. There's this campus carry.
Right.
And some other kind of wild ideas that the Senate never even took up in committee. So,
although it was a former senator who was served for a nanosecond who sponsored that bill, but
but it failed, which, you know, shows the strength of the Senate.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. We've failed bills in committee. We failed bills on the floor. We failed amendments, which is new. And even though the House and the Senate for, you know, 3/4 of the session have gotten along great, we have had that roiling tension that, like, at the end of session, we're going to have to decide what we do with these policy bills. So I think it's coming to the forefront now. It's not bad. I think that's normal and natural. But overall, the House and the Senate are so much more independent from the governor. And it's been such a great sigh of relief for us.
That's so interesting. And I love it when you hear me all the time say this when my guests answer the questions, or, you know, you segue before I segue. And what's one of the things that I've noticed, and we saw it yesterday on some votes on amendments, and we've seen it in committees, and it wasn't just a one-off, that Republicans are not voting as a caucus on every bill. And not only that, they're getting up and they're talking against bills that are sponsored by Republicans. 2 years ago, we would not have seen that.
I agree.
And I really do think, or I should ask you, how much do you think that this feud between the governor and the speaker has kind of liberated Republicans, which is also empowering for Democrats, and maybe you can explain why, but how much of a role do you think that has played in what we're seeing now?
I think it's huge. I think that remember that DeSantis is also term limited. He lost the presidential election badly. And I think that took away a lot of his power. Up until that point, people were so afraid to do anything to cross him. And it has been a breath of fresh air in the legislature to see that we are finally functioning much more as the independent branch that we are supposed to be, with having 3 branches of government and us being one of the 3. And I do think a lot of it is the fear factor has been lessened, and you've seen people stand up, and it's really exciting when we see things defeated, like we did with the amendment on the 734 malpractice bill yesterday on the floor. It was a true vote. Everybody got to vote their conscience, and that's the way it should be. And it's so
it went down by one vote.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
there were a couple,
it was really interesting.
And I think there's a couple others. There was one person who voted wrong.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
I missed that.
Yeah.
I missed that. But
so
I also
it's actually 2 votes down. Plus, we were short one member who's returning today, so it's 3 votes down now.
Wow.
So
interesting.
Yeah,
interesting. I mean, it has been, to me, fascinating as somebody who's seen this for so long. You know, when the relationship with the governor and the legislative branch I was here back when Jeb Bush was walking the hall. Like he literally would walk the halls during the last couple of weeks of session, and you would see him going into legislators' offices. And this was how he got his policy through. It wasn't necessarily standing at a microphone and, getting his, what one rep, I think it might have been the speaker, called the army of online trolls, or the online army of trolls. This was before social media, but if there wasn't this tension between the governor and the House, you might, in previous administrations, have seen the governor come and try to be the peacemaker and broker a deal. So, if it takes knocking heads together, or if it takes bringing everybody down to plaza level, this is what might have happened in order to get the trains back on the track and get things rolling. But I don't think that's happening here.
I don't think that was ever his style. I've only been here under DeSantis, so this is all I know.
Wow.
Yeah, I came in with him in 2018.
Okay.
And it always amazed me that the governor wouldn't speak to all 160 legislators individually at some point or another. Hey, what's going on in your district? How can I help? You're the governor for all of us. And there's never, ever been that outreach. And even Republicans say the same thing.
But I think, and I've said this before, DeSantis has been very clear since his election, since his re-election particularly, that he has a mandate from the people. And so I really don't believe that he, and I'd love to talk to him about this, but I don't think that he sees himself as someone who's governing for all Floridians. He's governing with the policies and the ideology of the people who supported him, and that is, to me, a real decided shift from previous governors.
Well, but think about it, it's also the same as on the national level,
right?
I mean, and that's really where he emulates that model.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the president. He feels like he's only governing his base, and that's all he has to address. And so, and it's unfortunate because it's not true on either level, on the national or the state level. Just like Senator Polsky said, they are elected by all Floridians, and that's how we feel when we go to our districts. We respond to all our constituents. When they call our office and say, "Can you help with my driver's license?" we don't say, "Oh, are you Democrat or Republican?"
Right.
We just do the work,
Right.
And it's unfortunate that that shift has taken place as you described.
And isn't it so sad, the commentary that you just made, Dara, that he is just doing what he wants and doesn't feel that he has to reach out to the people? That's just not the way we should govern. And that's why the things that need to get done are not getting done or not getting fixed. Nobody asked for a Don't Say Gay bill. Nobody asked for, you can't get gender affirming care if your parents want you to. I thought we had parents' choice. Those are just not things that people cared about. And we spent so many
they care
years
about them
and time.
now. They care about them now because the Republicans have always been very good at framing the narrative in politics. And so the issue of transgender treatment or treatment for transgender individuals is now something that people care about.
But it's just such a small issue in terms of population, in terms of importance.
I'm not disputing that.
And so it's just we've just taken our eye off the ball. And that's how the property insurance crisis unfolded over the last 7 years, because we just weren't paying attention to it.
Now.
Oh, it's all better. Right, listeners? Divas? Is it all better?
I don't know. My car insurance, I've gone on about this before.
Well, that's the next hurdle.
Yeah. Anyway, 300%. Never had an accident, never had a ticket. I drive about 300 miles a year.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Anyway.
Yeah. So we'd like to get back to those issues.
So what are the issues that you think that Democrats have been good at either stopping? You mentioned the gun bills, or things that you have achieved during this session that you can go back and say, like, hey, we did this, and
well, we're not voting on fetal personhood.
Okay.
Which is great.
So hang on a second.
I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We also, the bill to ban gay gay pride flags. The flag bill
Oh, right.
failed also.
Okay. I didn't realize
Oh, and
that.
monuments.
Right, and monuments. A lot of the DEI items that were in bills are gone, so we're not doing anything in terms of stripping DEI, which was one of their priorities.
Right.
So we've been very successful in a lot of the areas where we had concerns. We're not done yet, but I'm hoping we don't look at the bill about sexually transmitted, not allowing minors to get sexually transmitted.
Oh my gosh, I was in the Rules Committee during the hearing on that bill, and it was really, it was very eye-opening. I had no idea. You know what else that bill does? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that it does not, it requires parental consent for kids to get a mental health evaluation.
Everything in that bill is parental consent. Yes.
Right, but that includes mental health.
It includes everything. That's what the bill did.
I got a press release saying like kids wouldn't be able to call the suicide hotline or something because of that. I'm not sure that that's...
I think maybe they'd have to report it, but that's basically what that bill did. Yeah. And also Senator Alita Berman mentioned some of the labor laws.
It's new. You're forgiven.
Some of the labor laws that we worked with on our advocates.
I love you. She's reading my script.
No,
here.
I wasn't. So we were able to stop this child labor law, this getting rid of all kinds of benefits for labor pool. These day workers, they had certain protections, and there was a bill to get rid of all those protections, and the minimum wage. Being able to sign away a minimum wage waiver. So all of those things have died along the way. I mean, imagine all those things we just mentioned if those were bills that we were hearing on the floor this week, how horrible
you're
that would
both
be.
Lawyers, right? So that argument, that debate about the minimum wage, and this is a constitutional right, and and that this and that Senator Martin, who's sponsoring the bill, his response to some of these questions, and the Democrats, I thought, did a quite potent job of questioning on that, was like, this gives you the ability. Let me see if I can get it right. It empowers you because it gives you the ability to give up your constitutional right. Do you know? I mean, it was kind of
the word salad.
Platitudes we hear there were crazy. I mean, we know, and also that bill was about saying that if you're in like a program, you could use less than the minimum wage. And we asked him what kind of programs there are, and there were no answers. He didn't have an answer for that issue. I questioned whether somebody could work at McDonald's and give up their minimum wage.
I heard that.
And he basically said yes.
Yeah.
I mean, so he didn't have the answers.
And there wasn't any kind of like time restraint on it. I think
and he even talked about college students waiving their minimum wage.
The Constitution be damned.
Well, he also said lower wage is better than no wage.
Yeah.
Was his response.
Yeah, that
to
was a pretty
Senator
snarky
Osgood.
response. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
There's a lot of times they like to push the envelope. They think that it's worth it to buck the Constitution, get a new ruling by a judge or a conservative Florida Supreme Court, and try to make new law. And in fact, we were just talking about how so many of these pieces of legislation, especially several years ago, created so many lawsuits that the taxpayers pay for. Mm-hmm. And one of our bills, I was trying to remember which one, maybe social media, maybe that was the one, put like $1 million in the bill for legal fees because they knew, I'm not sure if that was the bill, I think it was. And of course they were sued, and I think that they lost. And so everything
that case is ongoing. And matter of fact, I believe there's a hearing in that case tomorrow. And it was sent back down to the U.S. Supreme Court, sent it back down to the circuit here. Judge Hinkle I've been writing about that case. So that's an interesting, we have a lot. Periodically, I'll do a deep dive into how much we've spent. I haven't done that in a while.
We tried to get an answer to that with a bill I did, to get a database of how much we're spending, which law firms we're hiring, and we don't do any kind of request for a proposal to get the best rate with outside law firms. And we have hundreds of internal lawyers. Why we need to hire outside law firms, I'm not sure. But if you do, you need to be able to justify that. But of course, they don't hear that, Bill.
Yeah, there's a certain select law firms here in Tallahassee that get a lot of the litigation sent their way.
And DC.
And DC, yeah. We mentioned the ballot initiatives, and everybody's looking at their watches. I know you're going to have to go, so just tell me, I
Sure,
could talk forever, so just tell me when you need to go. The ballot initiatives overhaul, that is one of the last things now that you all will be doing before you at least temporarily go home at some point today or tomorrow. I've been writing quite a bit about this. There's so much in that just soup to nuts.
Talk about unconstitutional also.
and this really, if this were to, and I'm expecting it to pass both chambers, but we don't know if it were to pass. People who are familiar with the ballot initiative, the citizen initiative process, have told me this would essentially, nobody would be able to do it anymore. And
that's the ultimate goal,
right?
Unfortunately,
right. And I was listening to some of the debate yesterday. It's all about eliminating fraud, and we want our elections to be, clean. And there weren't that many cases. Can you talk about the report that they rely on? Talk about why you think this would be so problematic a little bit.
So they made a great case. It makes for great propaganda that there was so much fraud. Question was asked on the floor yesterday. Can you tell us about how many cases were prosecuted and how many people were charged? And there was no answer. They have a 900-page thing. I'm not even going to call it a report. The first few pages talk about some fraudulent activity, but there's been some reporting that you probably are aware of that says that it was the mathematics on that were incorrect. That maybe there was some, in fact, in Broward County, I think 50,000 petitions were thrown away, but there were still 100,000 that they used. So this is kind of a normal course of things. It doesn't mean that there was fraud. And you'll hear when we go back to the floor today, you're going to hear our debates on this. But my big issue is we're not voting on whether these petitions are valid. These petitions are getting it to the opportunity for us to vote on it. They're making a bigger deal about the signatures for the petitions than they make about the actual vote. You did make that
argument yesterday that the actual vote is, and Senator Grall's response to that was, well, this is like changing our founding document, and so.
Yeah, but think about this, and for your listeners, the divas, listen to this. We get elected. Some people by petition. I've never gone that route, but a lot of people do. Nobody's checking those signatures except the normal course. The supervisor election checks them. You have enough. You're on the ballot. Once you're on the ballot, you obviously have to win. You have to get the votes.
These changes would not apply to that.
They would not apply to that. But the reason I bring it up is because we can put an amendment on the ballot just by vote of this legislative body. So it's the process that gets us here could be as equally fraudulent as the process that they're talking about for signature gathering for the petitions. And then it still goes to the voters to vote. So just because something gets on the ballot doesn't mean it's going to pass. And I just think it's very hypocritical of them because they're not dealing with the whole picture. And the thing that really bothered me is this bill is requiring the supervisor of elections to send a letter to everyone who signed a petition saying, are you sure? Did you really mean to sign that? But they don't have to reach out to someone who made a mistake and forgot to put the date, and then they have to throw out the ballot. They don't give them an opportunity to cure.
I guess the way that verification letter is worded could really kind of change the way a voter might think about something.
Absolutely.
It's meant to scare.
To intimidate. Yeah. For
right.
sure. They want, there's a little box on there that you can check. They're making it as easy as they can for them to rescind their their signature on the petition.
And also, these things are so expensive now, right? Trulieve spent $150 million trying to get the recreational marijuana amendment passed last year. And I think they spent around that same amount of money on the abortion initiative, not Trulieve, but the pro-choice folks. And this would all go into the cost for the sponsors. They would have to pay for whatever this takes. And I have no idea because we haven't seen any kind of, fiscal impact statement on this.
And when we ask them that, they say, "Oh, it's okay. We don't need a fiscal impact because the sponsors will pay for it."
I know.
So we can't get a real fiscal impact.
Yeah.
And think about it. It's so expensive to do a ballot initiative right now. Not just even in terms of once you're on the advertising, but just getting all those petitions and signatures together. They're trying to make it more and more impossible for the citizens of the state to have their voices heard.
Do you think it's because of the abortion and marijuana amendments?
It came too close for them.
Really?
That's my opinion.
They got, I think, 57%, around 57. Yeah. So to keep it from being able to come back.
Correct.
And there's another, the recreational one.
Look, everything that we've had that has passed, returning citizens' right to vote. Yeah. Those are all things that the Republican legislature would not do on their own. Mm-hmm. But this was, and I think, and the minimum wage, but I think it was the tipping point that we saw these two issues. And that was, the governor was like, no, we have to do something. And this is where we ended up. And I do think this is the worst bill of the session. No question.
It would be a little more intellectually honest if they just said, let's just put it on the ballot and let people vote on whether they want to do away with this or not. And then they could, the chamber could spend as much money as they want trying to convince voters that, pregnant pigs don't belong in the Constitution.
Every time that there's kind of a step forward with the passing of a good citizens initiative or certain election results, they come back with harsher penalties, harsher requirements, whether it's voting or it's this petition initiative. And that's been, again, for me, the course of 7 years, I've seen it happen. And as I was preparing my statements for today, it occurred to me that there's a pattern here, that every time we take a step forward, we have to go backwards. We did it with this petition initiative in maybe 2019 after the Citizens Returning Amendment passed, the First Amendment 4. Then they put a much stricter requirements on how many initiatives you needed, how many ballots you needed signed from more congressional districts. Mm-hmm. So because they didn't like that passed. And so every time something good happens, then they make it harder and harder. And that's why we have new election bills almost every year. This is the election bill this year. There was supposed to be another one, but luckily we didn't hear of that.
Right.
And I want to say one good thing that's in this bill. Okay. Miraculously, we got an amendment.
It's in there now.
It's in. Well, it was an amendment that Senator Bradley got in, and it was a bill that I had.
That's right.
To prohibit the governor or now any state agency from using public funds to advertise and even communicate about advocacy for one of these amendments.
Right.
So that is a good thing. And I'm really glad it's on there.
Because the governor and some of his executive agencies did.
And I'm convinced that that's why they didn't pass, unfortunately. They were so close, but there was such misleading advertising done with regard to both of those amendments at the end, unfortunately.
He's used his executive power in ways that we haven't seen, and you've been around.
Yes, he has used it much. It's abuse. I'm sorry the Hope Florida investigation died. I hope that's not the end. I hope there's some legal recourse that we see. But, that was where that money went. It went into political committees that advertised against amendments that the citizens of the state of Florida wanted.
It's the ballot issue is very interesting. The changes to election laws also, it does take people. The research shows that it takes people a certain number of election cycles to get used to the changes in election law. First we loved mail-in. I still call them absentee ballots, mail-in ballots. Now, we don't so much anymore. We loved the drop boxes. We don't love the drop boxes.
It depends on what happened in the last election, whether we like them or not.
Right. So I guess, we'll see. There might be another election bill next year. We don't
I'm
know.
sure. And maybe your divas, if this bill passes, could just apply to become a petition circulator, and then you don't have to worry about how many petitions you pick up.
Well, you have to be registered now. I mean, my neighbor is on the DEC, locally active Democrat, and he's constantly circulating petitions. And I'm always telling him, no, like I can't sign. But he would have to register. So the volunteers, basically, I think it does away with volunteer circulators. Right?
You can give out.
Oh, you can.
You can give out. You can collect. So if people are interested.
No, he was collecting them.
Right. So I think, I don't know how hard the application process is, but I'll sign up to be a petition circulator. Why not? Just so then we can make sure.
To look into the details.
This way we can just collect and not worry about it.
Thing, right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
all right. Well, that's fine. Let's find out about that. All right. Is there anything else that you want to discuss before I ask a few little lighthearted questions?
Let's go for the lighthearted.
Oh, she's ready.
We've got a day ahead of us.
Okay. All right. What's your favorite snack for the legislative session? What do you have? Like, is there anything that you have?
Okay. We have little chocolates in the back of the chamber, and mine is a Heath bar.
Heath bar.
With those little chocolates, I go for Hershey's Special Dark. I like dark chocolate. Oh my gosh,
I like dark chocolate too, but it's not on my meal plan as a diabetic. So mine is these roasted edamames that come in little packets.
Oh, that sounds
healthy.
good.
Sorry.
Okay. Crocs, yay or nay?
Nay.
Ooh.
I know you like them because I'm a dedicated listener. Not for me. My feet are too big.
Okay. Does anybody drink soda? You're so healthy. Okay. Coke or Pepsi?
Coke. Diet Coke. Okay. All the way, all the time.
Look, I've got one on my desk.
Water,
and
sorry. No
water?
Water. I'm a water drinker.
Just water. All right. Well, listen, it's been fun. I had one more. The Residents. Have you guys watched The Resident?
Yes, I did watch it.
OMG. That was like exactly what we needed because it had a little bit of the politics and, the murder mystery.
I'm not done yet. I haven't gotten all the way through
Okay,
yet.
no,
so
I'm not.
Give the
I'm just saying, but it's got politics and murder mystery and capital intrigue. So, yes,
I saw it. Yeah,
highly
it was very
recommend.
Good. Yeah.
All right. Well, Senate Minority Leader Lori Berman and Senator Tina Polsky, thank you so much for joining Deeper Dive. It's been a real treat.
It's been fun. Thank you. Thanks, Divas.
Divas, right, exactly. Thank you, Divas.
Well, we'll have you back.
So happy to be here.
Thank you so much. I can't wait for you to come back.